Gayle Ruzicka, president of the Utah Eagle Forum, thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
Happy to do it. Sounds like fun.
We'll see how it goes. You have been a fixture up at the Utah Legislature for the last, 33, 34 years?
30 years.
Yeah, 30 years up at the Utah Legislature. What is it in your past that drives you to be part of that process up there?
I grew up in a home that was very politically active, and my parents always taught us that we needed to be involved and that our voice was important.
And is that it? I mean, there are a lot of folks who are raised in homes that are politically active, but to be at the legislature every day that is active.
When I got involved with Eagle Forum, and that's what we do. Eagle Forum is a national organization, and we're about lobbying, on a state level and lobbying on a national level. I just returned this last week from a national convention in Washington, D.C., and while we were there, we were lobbying nationally, and sometimes I've made special trips back to D.C. to lobby, but most of the time it's here in Utah.
What issues are important to the Eagle Forum right now?
Well, we're a pro-family, pro-life organization, so any of the issues that have to do with those issues, we're involved. And the life issue is very important to us. We're always involved in the life issue. We just recently have gotten involved in the human trafficking, especially the children. And in fact, I'm involved on a national level on that with National Eagle Forum.
And what kinds of activities does Eagle Forum engage in when it comes to these issues?
Well, life is something, every single year we have legislation about the pro-life issue. And I was around back when the Supreme Court made the decision that said that abortion would be legal. And so ever since that time, I've been involved almost on a yearly basis working on legislation that kind of chisels away at that.
You've been active up at the Utah Legislature for the past 30 years. How much longer do you think you can go, and is there anyone who could replace you?
Oh, there's lots of people that could replace me. That's the great thing. I have lots of people I work with. We have a large organization and people that have been with me for as long as I've been there, and new people coming all the time. And so we keep looking at these new young faces and voices, and one of those people will be replacing me. There's no doubt about it, and thank goodness that's the way it's supposed to be. But I feel like that this is a calling. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was a calling. And so I've always just said I'll be there till the Lord releases me. Whether He'll release me from this calling or release me from this life, I'm not sure. But I'll, as long as it's appropriate for me to be there in terms of the way I feel, my health, and other things that are important, I'll still be there. But there's lots of other people there with me that are part of Eagle Forum, and they do a lot of the work, most of the work. I just talk a lot.
There is a big difference between a job and a calling. Can you describe to me what goes on inside your heart when you identify an issue that Eagle Forum ought to be engaged in and that you ought to be vocal on?
Well, you start out saying that there's a difference between a job and a calling. I'll tell you right up front, with a job, if you get a job, you usually get paid. A calling, you don't get paid for. So I've done this all these years, the 30 years here in Utah. But before I came to Utah, I was involved. I started with Eagle Forum years ago when I lived in Idaho. And so a calling is something that that is in your heart, that the Lord lets you know that this is what you need to do. And you just move forward from that. So I don't do anything I don't discuss with the Lord first. If He's called me to do this, I better do it His way. And if it's not His way, I'll do it the way He says. I mean, if something isn't right, I won't do it. But if I feel it's right, and I always feel it's right, to do what I can do to defend the unborn babies, or all babies, born and unborn, and the family. The family is so important to us. We are a pro-family organization. So any of the issues that have an impact on the family, we're going to be involved in. Now, we can't do everything, so we have to pick and choose the things that we think are the most important to us. And people often say to me, so, Gayle, what are you working on this year at the legislature? And I say, I don't know. I have to see what bills are coming from the other side, because most of the time we're just working to make sure bad things don't pass.
You talk about being pro-family, and I would imagine that the Eagle Forum was against gay marriage.
That's right. And we still are.
Yes. Against gay rights. Is that another fair statement? Or?
When you say rights, we believe all people have equal rights. I mean, we're all created equal, and we're all equal. But So it depends on how you look at that. We certainly don't want anybody to be mistreated. We all have friends, lots of friends, like we certainly do, who are living that lifestyle. They're still our friends. They're in our home. They come for Sunday dinner. They're part of our life. And so we love them and want them to succeed and be happy. So I want for them the same rights of the right to be happy and live a good life, but not when it infringes, to the point that it takes away somebody else's rights, like religious liberty and things like that. Religious liberty is a very, very important issue that we work on, and sometimes that gets a little muddy. But the important thing is that we work very hard for the things we believe in, make sure that we stand up for what's right, but we always have to love all people and be concerned about everybody. They're all children of God, and so they're my friends.
When the issues that Eagle Forum fights for, the pro-family, the anti-abortion, the anti-gay marriage, and those kinds of things, when those issues pass into law and go contrary to what the Eagle Forum would like to see, what does that do to you in your heart and your views about this country and this community?
Well, it hurts my heart. But it doesn't stop what we do. As like I pointed out, it was many years ago, back in 1972, that the Supreme Court said that abortion should be legal. And it didn't stop what we've done. We've just worked harder and worked every year to try to make changes. And I think that's the case of everything. We don't all get what we want. We just work hard to do what's right. And so whatever the laws are that are passed, sometimes we work hard to amend them and to change them and to try to make things better. But I think the important thing is the people. I've always said that if the day ever comes where I start to take this personal, or I can't be kind to the people and love the people, then I shouldn't be doing this. So I always keep that in mind and make sure that I am friends with the people, and some of the people that I debate, and it looks like we're just really, before we start debating, we're talking, and afterwards we're talking and learning about each other and about our families. And so as long as we do that and make sure we do things the Lord's way, we'll be blessed in what we try to get done.
I've heard that you have a wonderful relationship with Utah Senator Jim DeBackus.
Well, we are friends, yes. He's funny, so everybody has to have a funny friend.
I think many people would be surprised that the two of you are good friends.
I hope they're not surprised.
How do you explain that?
Just like I said, he's a person that I like, and I like a lot of people, and we should be friends. You can be friends with people you don't agree with. In fact, it'd be awful if you weren't friends with people you don't agree with. It'd make a very narrow world, and it's God's world. We need to do it His way.
This work that you have been engaged in over the past 30 years, the average person would look at that and it would be very daunting. What toll has it taken on you personally?
Well, I'm getting old fast, so maybe that's part of it. I don't know. There's a lot of things probably I would have spent a lot more time doing, but it's interesting enough that I find that whatever I do, I always circle back around to these things because I care about people, and I care about what's going on, and I believe that this is God's country, and I believe that in the Constitution of this great nation that I believe, and I want to protect the Constitution, do all that I can. One of the issues that we work really hard on is there's a group out there who'd like to have a constitutional convention, and we don't believe that should happen. We've got a great Constitution. We don't need to change the Constitution that we have. Is given to us by men of God. I think the founders were inspired. And so we will always do what we need to do and can do to stand up to defend the Constitution. That's a lot of work, and it just keeps bringing me back.
Mm-hmm. Over the past 30 years, how has Utah changed?
Well, it has changed a lot. The legislature's even changed a lot over the years, probably because I'm getting older and they're getting younger, so that makes it different. But overall, it's about the same. It's a great place to live. Utah is such a great family state. It's been interesting to move here and be in the headquarters of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the church that I grew up in, and to be able to just be closer and watch things that I didn't ever see before and make some great friends.
Is the average citizen engaged enough in politics, do you think?
No, no, they're not. You know, everybody's busy raising their children, and that's good. And they just don't look and see what's happening. Hopefully, more people will vote, but they need to be informed voters. That's very important, to be an informed voter. And so they don't get that involved. Sometimes when people complain about what I'm doing and what I'm saying, or make comments about, well, why would the legislature listen to me or pay any attention to anything I have to say? My answer to them is always, come on up and do the same thing. They pay attention to the people that are there. So if they don't like what I'm doing and they want something different, come on up. You know, I've met a lot of friends who did that. They came on up, and we're on the same side, but we're good friends.
The politicians in Utah know who you are very, very well because of your presence up at the legislature. How would you assess your gravitas or your power up at the legislature as a non-elected presence there?
Well, I don't know about the word power, but it's the people. You know, like I said, I don't get paid anything. I'm up there as a volunteer, and I work with a lot of people, a large group of Utah Eagle Forum people, but also we form coalitions. There's a lot of other groups up there, and we work together in coalitions. So we represent a lot of people all together. They're not all up there, but they're all over the state, and they're home rearing children, and they're home making phone calls and sending emails and letting their voice be heard. And we're up there to represent them and take their notes and messages to the legislators. And so it's, you know, I don't spend money. I don't have money to take anybody out to dinner or to a ball game, a jazz game, or do anything like that. But we have people, and they care more about the people. When somebody offers to take them to dinner versus somebody has 100 people call them, they'll listen to the 100 people. And so that's what we're about. We're just about being there and saying, here's the people, here's their names. They get the emails from them, and we find out what's going on. We're sitting in the meetings, and we're testifying and reading the bills and find out what's going on so we can send the message out to the people.
You mentioned telephone calling. One of the methods that you communicate with the other members of the Eagle Forum and regular citizens as well is the phone tree. Tell me how that works and how effective it is in getting your message across to lawmakers.
Well, when I first came here and started, it was the most effective thing in the world because nobody else wants to do it. And there wasn't any such thing as internet. And so the only way of communicating was by telephone. And we just organized what we call a telephone tree. And, you know, 5 people called 5 people that called 5 people. And we organize that in groups, and we have chapters all over the state, Eagle Forum chapters all over the state of Utah. And each chapter had a phone tree. And so we would call the chapter presidents, give the chapter presidents a message, and then they would call, and we did have faxes then, and fax. And 5 people would have 5, and it went all over the state because you call 5 people and ask them to call the list on the next 5 down. But then all those people call their friends and their family and everybody else all over the state. The next thing you know, the whole state knows about it, and the whole state's talking about it. I used to do my radio show. I have a radio show that I've done for years, and I used to do it once a week up in the gallery at the legislature. And we could have phone calls going in while I'm on the saying, I'm up here, they're talking, this is the issue, you know, so-and-so's just gave a speech and here's what they said. And I would have them looking up at me saying, what's going on? Why am I getting these phone calls? Because we had it organized so we could let the word out and they get the phone calls in a hurry.
Can you give me an example of when the phone tree actually changed a stance of key legislators, or when it made a difference in the process?
Wow, there's been a lot of them, over the years, but there was one time where they were going to extend the school year, and from the 180 days to 220. And back then there wasn't internet, so hardly anybody knew about it. And we put it out on the phone tree, and it literally shut down. The ladies at the legislature were telling me, our phones won't quit ringing. The legislators were saying, whoa, stop, and finally one legislator, I won't mention his name, but he's very involved in education and was very supportive of that. And he stood up and he said, he gave a little speech and he said, I can't vote for this. And everybody's shocked because he was so supportive. And he said, this was back a while ago. He says, last night, I received 66 phone calls just when I got home from the legislature. And that was a lot of phone calls to get in one evening. And because, again, no internet. And he said, I can't vote for this now. And it just died on the board. So that's the kind of thing that it had nothing to do with me. It was all about the people.
What do you think of the compromise legislation, or the compromise involving Proposition 2, the medical marijuana initiative?
That's not something that I have spent much time with. It's 129 pages. I have not read it. I've read parts of it, of course, but I haven't sat down to read the whole thing because that's not something I'm working on right now. So I don't really have an opinion of how I feel about what's in that. What I think is important now is that we look to Prop 2 and whether it passes or whether it fails. And I've been involved, very, very involved in working against Proposition 2, and will continue to do that through the next month. I will then, after that happens, when we see what the end result is and see what happens next, I will wait until they're ready to do something with that legislation. And then I'll look at it, I'll read it, I'll study it like I always do. And I certainly plan to be involved if I have concerns.
There are those who feel like Proposition 2 has to pass in order to keep the legislature honest in approaching this compromise that two of the parties have come up with. What are your feelings on that? Are you worried that the legislature will get to this compromise and say, well, we don't want this?
Well, first of all, I disagree with any statement that says that it has to pass. I believe that the people should defeat this. I think it has too many things in it that we couldn't possibly support. And I think if the people were to read all 28 pages, they would vote against it. So anybody who's saying it has to pass hasn't read what's in there if they are concerned about their children, if they're concerned about this issue. You know, if it were to pass for 19 months or more, the people of Utah, anybody, you, me, anybody that wanted to could be using marijuana. Because it says that anybody that would say that they could qualify for a medical card, just say that. They could possess, they could use, or they could manufacture marijuana. I don't know where they're going to possess it when it won't be legal yet here in the state. So, of course, they could grow it so they could manufacture it. That's terrible. That's an awful thing, and I think people wouldn't vote for it if they knew that. So I don't like it when somebody says it should pass, because it shouldn't pass. It should be defeated, along with all the other problems that are in that initiative that shouldn't pass. So can the legislature be trusted? I've been up there for 30 years, and I find that they can be trusted. Not everybody all the time. But, of course, they need to keep in mind that this compromise, which I was not part of, and neither was Drug Safe Utah, that's the coalition I belong to. That's why we're moving forward, just like we always have been, and we're going to work very hard for all the obvious reasons to defeat Proposition 2. But their leadership meant in these meetings, and their leadership made that commitment, and I think their leadership will keep their commitment to try to make that happen. But they've got to go back to the entire legislature now. And I think as the legislature looks at this, they're going to have to make that decision. So the important thing is if the initiative is defeated, then we have a clean slate. They have said what they want to have and be in that legislation. And I think that's what they'll work from. But there are so many things that people don't know and realize about Proposition 2. The fact that THC, for instance, most people don't even know what THC even is. And of course, THC is the psychotropic part of the marijuana plant. Right. Well, you know, back in the 60s, when marijuana was the big thing back then, there was 2 to 3% THC in marijuana. Now there is, depending, up to 40%. The average just came out from the government in Colorado right now. Just last year, the average percent of THC was in the flower, in the whole plant, was 19.6%. In the concentrates, it was 68.6% percentage of THC versus 2 to 3 all those years ago in the 60s. So it's not the same. It's genetically modified, and not something that we would want our children to be able to get their hands on and use, or even for medical reasons, and that high percentage of THC that would be available to anybody who walked in the marijuana store. Once they got that card, they could walk in there and buy anything they want off those shelves, brownies, cookies, candies, juices, you name it. They could buy all those things off the shelf and have as high as 68% THC. I don't think the people of Utah would want that at all, and want anybody to be able to walk. And 18-year-olds can get the card and go in there and buy that percentage. And like I say, for 19 months, they just have to say they could get a card.
So do you oppose medical marijuana personally and as part of the coalition?
Oh, no, we don't. I don't oppose, and neither does the coalition oppose medical marijuana. We just think that it needs to be treated like all medicine, that it needs to be doctor prescribed and dosed, and then filled out of a pharmacy, like all medicine. If we have real medical marijuana that is in dosage form, that doctors, it's been studied and they understand, what should be in that, what the percentage of THC should be, what products, different products that, say, a child, because remember, it says right in the initiative that parents can get it for their children of all ages. Just walk in the store and guess what they need to get for their child. A 40-year-old man can buy the same products as a 2-year-old, the parents buy for a 2-year-old. So first they have to get it in a medicinal form. Properly prescribed and dosed, then that's what medicine is. And I support that.
Because of the controversy surrounding now U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, that controversy going up to the confirmation vote, do you feel like now that he is on the court, in any way he is either compromised, diminished, or tainted because of what's happened?
I hope not. I hope that after the proper investigations that people will let this go. He has a right to live his life, a good life, and his children have a right to be able to look to their father and know that they're not going to constantly be talking about him. And it is what it is. He is now the Supreme Court Justice. Nothing was ever proven that he'd done anything wrong, and I think we need to let it go. It's so divisive, and look what it does to our country. I was in Washington, D.C. last week. I saw what was going on. The contention, the anger, that's not what this country is about, and that's not how we want to live. We saw a little bit of that back in the days of Justice Thomas, and look, he's turned out to be a great justice. I happen to know his wife personally. She's a friend. They're good people. And now the Kavanaughs have gone through this. And I think now he's been confirmed. Let's move on. Let's move on and not let this divide our country, and certainly not let it affect the way we treat each other.
Certainly the tone in this country has changed politically. I mean, we've got folks on either side of the extremes just digging their heels in, and a precious few coming to the middle and being willing to work together with the other side. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the political future of this country?
Changes all the time. I'm old enough that I've seen all kinds of things happen, and hopefully we just all move forward. It's up to each one of us individually and how we treat people. How contentious we want to be. I don't like contention. I like to stand up for what I believe in, but I like to get along with the people around me and respect them and hope they'll respect me. There's something about watching people do what they believe in and having respect for them. And we can all do that. And it kind of starts with us, how we feel about things. I love this country, and I believe in this country. And as I said, I believe in the United States of America and the Constitution of this great country. And I believe that we got this Constitution from God Himself. And I think if we all look at it that way and do what we think is best, but be kind to one another, treat each other with respect. Even sometimes when there have been times in my life when I had to grit my teeth, go to the corner, kick it a few minutes, bang my head against the wall, shed a few tears, and walk away smiling. So it's not easy to always walk around happy with a smile on your face, but you should. So you should go find that private corner where you can kind of let go for a minute and then come back. Just be nice to people.
Well, Gayle Ruzicka, president of the Utah Eagle Forum, thank you so much for being part of 3 Questions.
Okay, happy to do it. It was fun. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. All right.